Let's get into a little golf talk with Jason Sobel from the Action Network. Adam Kaufman here with you. It is the Butterfield Bermuda Championship on the way, naturally, Jason, in Bermuda. But before we look ahead, I want to look back. Zozo Championship last week. We spent a lot of time talking about Hideki Matsuyama, of course, going back to his native Japan, wound up winning the event. I realize this was by no means a shock, but even still, just if you like to take that little stroll down narrative street, great story.
Yeah, it was a great story. And Adam, I love the fact that, maybe we learned a little something about players, and some players like to pump themselves up, say, man, I'm hitting it great this week. Watch out for me. I could win. And then, you see, and then they're like, nah, I really wasn't hitting it great. I just kind of said that. Other players tend to kind of set the bar lower. And so Hideki, prior to the Zozo last week, said, if I was a 10 out of 10 at Augusta National when I won the Masters, I am less than 1 right now. But I'm in Japan. I'm going to try my best, and we'll see what happens. And he went out and won by 5. So keep that in mind. The next time Hideki says, I'm not playing my best golf, you might want to fire on Hideki.
It's always a good strategy. Just set the bar low, and that way you can really surprise people. It's nice. Well, the bar is
doing it.
But bar set low, at least in terms of the odds makers in the DraftKings Sportsbook for Brian Gay. Now, last year, he won the Bermuda, this Butterfield Bermuda Championship here. And he was 200-1, came out on top, but this time around he's way down the board. You look at him at plus 10,000 to win this thing. Matt Fitzpatrick actually leads the way at plus 1,000 odds. Do you like him better than the defending champ?
Are you giving me sort of an even money head-to-head matchup here, Adam?
Well, why not?
Patrick or Brian Gay? Okay. I'm going to go with the tournament favorite over the defending champ, Matt Fitzpatrick. Look, this guy's a Ryder Cupper. This guy's a world-class player. He's coming off a win at Valderrama just a few weeks ago on the European Tour. So, Matt Fitzpatrick is the guy that I look at as sort of the card wrecker this week, that if you don't want to dip down to right about 10-1 right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook, then I get it. Some big numbers, like you said, Brian Gay last year, Brendan Todd the year before. Some big numbers have won this tournament, but Matt Fitzpatrick could very well be the guy who, at the end of it, you're sitting there holding all these triple-digit tickets with guys who are in contention, and Fitz is the guy who can ruin that card for you. That said, Brian Gay, yeah, okay, great win last year. The guy's pushing 50 right now. I don't see him repeating as champion once again, so I will take that bet, Adam. I will take Fitz at even money over Brian Gay this week.
Yeah, I can't say I blame you. I'm curious to hear how you feel about Patrick Reed. Of course, another familiar guy near the top of the leaderboard. He's plus 2,000. Thing is, Reed hasn't had a top 5 finish since the Memorial way back in June. So What's your outlook on him here?
Yeah, I am not cautiously optimistic, cautiously pessimistic, I guess, on Patrick Reed right now. It's very interesting, the fact that if I had shown you this field 6 months ago and said, okay, where are the odds going to be? You'd kind of look down the list of names and say, oh my goodness, Patrick Reed's playing against all these guys. He's going to be 6-1 in this field. And we see it, and he's close to 20-1 in the DraftKings Sportsbook. And so you see Patrick Reed's name there, and you say he should be probably lower in this field. I believe he's 4th on the board, but has not played his best golf. He's been injured. He's had some illnesses, and so he's trying to fight back from that. There is a reason, though, that he's playing this event, and this sort of reminds me, Adam, and I hesitate to say this because I'm not on Reed this week, but sort of reminds me of the Sanderson Farms Championship last year. I know that's a random one to throw at you from over a year ago, but that week Sergio Garcia was something like 40-1, 50-1 going into the week, and if you just looked up and down the field, you'd say, well, Sergio is by far the most decorated and popular player who's in that field. But you looked at it and said, well, he's had some bad results coming into this. And I don't know. It just doesn't feel like an event that he'd want to go play against a bunch of guys who are sort of inferior competition, might not be really motivated. Of course, Sergio went out and won that week because he was the best player there. And so sometimes that's all it boils down to. We can sit here and look at, strokes gained over the last 24 rounds and, Bermuda greens. And what does that mean? Sometimes you just look at it and say, well, Patrick Reed is better than all those other players, so maybe he's going to win. Again, I don't love him this week, but that's a certain possibility if Patrick Reed can kind of get everything together and be motivated enough to beat some guys who, quite frankly, are not as good as him.
Sometimes being good is just good enough. So let's find out then. Is there another good guy, not a long shot, another guy who's, cream of the crop, near the top, of that list who you like? You think he has a good shot this week to win?
I'll save my favorite outright play for later. I know you always ask me that last, so I will dip down just a little bit. This mid-tier is very, very interesting to me. I think that there's definitely some value in this kind of 40 to 60 to 1 range. There's a lot of players, more so than usual, in this range. I'll start with Denny McCarthy, who's been 5th and 14th in the previous 2 editions of this tournament. This one's on a very short Port Royal golf course in Bermuda, and so it turns into a little bit of a putting contest, and if it does, Denny McCarthy is one of the best putters, especially on Bermuda greens. No, by the way, Adam, I have done the diligent research, and yes, they do have Bermuda greens in Bermuda. So
good.
I want to figure that out.
Appreciate that.
Grayson Sigg is another guy coming off the Corn Ferry Tour who I like this guy's game, and I like him, again, on Bermuda greens, shorter golf course. This is a place where I would target him, and I like him a lot this week.
There aren't a ton of real familiar names. I mean, I feel like we've kind of talked about the popular ones. So that in mind, you dip down to those long shots that I alluded to before. Is there one who stands out?
There's a few. I'll give you Brian Stewart as a guy who fits the profile. Again, Brian Gay and Brendan Todd, the last 2 winners, they had a lot in common. They had each missed 4 cuts prior to winning this event. They each hadn't had a top 10 in over a year. They were each in the bottom 5% of driving distance on the PGA Tour. Brian Stewart fits that profile perfectly. So I don't know that I necessarily love him. It's hard to love a guy that's had 4 missed cuts, but that's what each of the past 2 winners have done here. So I like him. I like Ryan Armour. I like Kurt Kitayama. What do they all have in common? They all hit the ball very, very straight. That's going to be important this week. Length doesn't matter, but accuracy really does.
Got to make some tough decisions, and that means it's not just favorites, it's the guys you don't like. Who are you fading this week?
I'm fading any and all players who played last week in Japan at the Zozo Championship. There is not, I have checked this out as well, there is not a direct flight from Tokyo to Southampton, Bermuda. So I get it. These guys are professional golfers, and they travel all the time. What's the big deal? Get some rest on the plane, and they should be, up and raring to go and have full energy by Thursday. Look, that's all well and good. We can say that as people who don't play professional golf for a living, but these guys are human beings. And at some point, your body wears down and gets tired, and you don't have the energy necessary to go out and play some solid golf. Now, a lot of these players who were originally in the field, Brendan Todd is one of them. I mentioned him as a past champion. Adam Schenk is another. I kind of liked him a little bit. Takumi Kanaya. These guys have already withdrawn before the week even started, saying, look, I thought I could make that trip. I can't make that trip. I'm not going Japan to Bermuda. But of those who are still doing this, Nat Neesmith is one. Garrick Higo is another one. There aren't too many of them, but those who are going to try to go back-to-back, I think it's very difficult. And quite frankly, most of the guys who are playing 2 in a row coming off Japan didn't really have a great week last week, so they're not exactly chasing a good one anyway. So I'm staying away from those players.
Nerve these guys. Maybe they don't know about the Bermuda grass in Bermuda.
Maybe.
Might motivate them a little bit.
Maybe.
All right, who's going to win the Butterfield Bermuda Championship?
Adam Hadwin is going to win this thing. He's my favorite player. Look, he plays well on shorter golf courses. He's got some form. He was 6th in his last start at the Shriners Children's Open in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. He's got 3 top 10s in his last 7 appearances, and this guy's a deadly accurate player. I think he's going to be good with the driver, good with his irons this week, and quite frankly, he's a little bit better. We talked about Patrick Reed sort of being better than his number. I think Adam Hadwin is a better golfer than he's being given credit for in the books. I think there's a lot of value there. He's a guy that can go out and win this golf tournament. He's my favorite play.